Hello, and welcome to this webcast recording of how Adobe uses SD elements in its security product lifecycle. My name is Jim Hong. I'm the Group Technical Program Manager on the Adobe Secure Software Engineering team. And I've been responsible for evolving Adobe's secure product lifecycle from being focused on our desktop applications to being applicable to our web services products. I also work with a number of our product and operations teams to advise them on secure product architecture and help them implement best practices for clear, repeatable, and cross-functional processes that help them throughout the entire development cycle, from design and development through testing and deployment and finally into operations. I've been in the industry for more than 20 years, and throughout that time I have worn many different hats, from being a developer to working on product design, everything from UI, user experience, interactive design, to API design, on products like operating systems, to enterprise software and consumer software. Most recently, I've been taking those design skills and, as I mentioned earlier, I've been working with Adobe products and services to help take security principles and best practices and bake them right into the design of their products. So what we're here to talk about today is a product called SD Elements and how Adobe leverages this product to help with its overall security product lifecycle. Now, for those of you who may not be super familiar with the product, let me provide a kind of high-level perspective on this. And what SD Elements does is that it allows organizations to take their software projects, model them in the tool, and then it matches the relevant threats based upon the overall architecture of the product, and feeds them back to development teams so that they have a framework of mitigations that they can use while designing and developing their software. So how does that apply to Adobe specifically? Well, here at Adobe we have a methodology that we call the SPLC, and that is short for the Security Product Lifecycle. And that methodology has steps that map to every portion of a normal software product lifecycle. And so we have a training aspect to the SPLC, which distributes out security knowledge to managers, engineers, and testers so that they can apply security concepts and information right into the development process. And so that feeds into activities that we do during the requirements and planning phase, as well as the design and implementation phase, all the way out through deployment and then into production. All right then, so that then begs the question, where does SD Elements plug into the Adobe SPLC? And as you could see from a previous slide, SD Elements really plays a significant role in modeling applications and understanding the requirements and providing recommendations on how to mitigate well-known security issues and problems so that development teams can engage on them early on in the development process. And so naturally then it follows that that's primarily where we find the most value in the SPLC. And just to be clear, SD Elements does provide recommendations all the way up through and including the testing phase. But that's all sort of bundled into getting these security mitigations built in early on in the requirements and planning and design phases. So up to this point, nothing I've said here has been particularly revolutionary. Adobe has the SPLC methodology, which we use to inject security practices into all phases of the development cycle for our products and services. So I think the key question that we're answering here in this webcast is, how does SD Elements fit into that methodology, and what was the fundamental problem that we were looking to solve? I think the answer to that fundamentally boils down to consistency. And by consistency, what that means is, regardless of the size of the engineering team or the project or the product that's being worked on, whether it's a small, very scoped product or one that spans one or more business units, we can provide via SD Elements a core set of best practices that every team can go execute on. And what's nice about SD Elements is that it provides those recommendations based upon the architecture and the technology stack of the product. So it's not a generic set of recommendations, it's actually a targeted and relevant set of recommendations for each product and team. So what does that mean in a very specific sense? SD Elements is a tool that attempts to mimic the kind of recommendations a human security researcher might provide an engineering team. And by that I mean it analyzes what the architecture stack of the application looks like, and it gives you a targeted set of recommendations. Instead of saying, hey, here is the OWASP top 10 or the SANS 20 set of recommendations, kind of leaf through them and figure out which ones apply to you, and go ahead and apply mitigations based upon the issues that are talked about in those lists. So what SD Elements is that it kind of bypasses that sort of generic list mentality, and it gives you a very targeted set of tasks to go work on. And even beyond the customized list of tasks based upon your application architecture that SD Elements tries to give an engineering team, it also attempts to give the team very actionable, specific, example-based tips on how to remediate the fixes that it recommends. And so it gives the engineering team as many tools as possible, and again tries to mimic an actual human security researcher in as much as it possibly can, by giving the team very targeted feedback on how to go work security into their application. So we talked about how SD Elements allows the asset security researcher team to scale better and to provide these lighter touch projects, very targeted security work to kind of go focus on. It also provides the asset team the ability to really make proactive security work a lot more of a quantifiable activity. And being able to measure progress on security work is a tough thing to do, because the things that we're always talking about is how to mitigate risk, and the work that you do to help protect your application is all about risk mitigation, and that's oftentimes a difficult thing to quantify. But what you can quantify is how well a team does against the set of tasks that they've been assigned to go do. And because SD Element provides you a targeted and relevant set of tasks, you can measure against that full set of tasks in a way that gives both the engineering team as well as the asset team, and then all of management above both teams a quantifiable way to visualize how well engineering teams are doing in securing their applications. And the ability to have relevant, actionable engagements with all of the product teams across Adobe, regardless of size and scope, as well as the ability to track progress against all of these myriad different kinds of projects, are really the two key reasons why Adobe's asset team selected and deployed SD Elements. And we really kind of had it in place since Q3 of 2012, and the progress has been remarkable. We've got dozens and dozens of projects on SD Elements. So we're continuously tracking progress against the set of tasks that are recommended to the various project teams, and even engineers who feel that they're very security savvy people. We've gotten feedback even that some of them will look at a task and say, oh yeah, I forgot about that. And so just having a checklist of things to go think about that is again relevant and targeted is helpful for even the most security savvy engineer out there. And so it's been really beneficial to have in our environment, to get a steady, sort of a steady baseline of security thinking across the entire company. Now, I should say that it's currently limited to software as a service projects because SD Elements is targeted towards that. Although it does have mechanisms in place for desktop applications and whatnot to also leverage the tool, but it's really purpose built for SaaS projects, and that's how we've deployed it in Adobe. And as with everything else that we do in the SPLC, what we're trying to do is to understand and reduce our security risks as we develop our products and services for our customers. Likewise, we're also trying to make life a little bit easier for our development teams. And so we've also looked to extend the functionality of SD Elements to also include Adobe specific requirements that the engineering teams need to go act on. And we've been working with SD Elements closely to allow us mechanisms for which we can actually put those extensions into the tool itself. And as I mentioned, we're seeing some really good results so far. We've got a lot of these initial adopters of the tool, self-sufficient in using the tool, not just initially, but on an iterative basis. And then, as I mentioned before, we've gotten anecdotal stories back from a number of engineers that have really kind of validated the use of the tool by giving them very actionable feedback to kind of go and do work to help secure their applications. So I hope you've found this brief overview on SD Elements and how we at Adobe have taken the tool and deployed it internally and how it's augmented our SPLC process useful and interesting. If you want to find out more about SD Elements, just go out to www.sdelements.com and that site, the site there will give you a lot more in-depth detail on the tool and how you can start using it. So I hope you found this useful and interesting and hopefully even somewhat entertaining. My name is Jim Hong. I am the Group Technical Program Manager on the Asset team here at Adobe. And thanks for listening. Bye-bye.